What's going on, folks? It is Nightstargamer. Welcome to a new style of video I wanted to do. I'm I'm gonna be honest. I've done this video 2 times now. This is my third time doing this. First time the video got corrupted and it was just kind of not really salvageable. The second time I didn't sleep, so like the night before, so I had very low energy and just didn't have like the same like level of enthusiasm I had the first time I recorded it. Recorded it because I just didn't have that capability, and I have considered just dropping the video. But I do want to talk about this topic. I wanted to kind of start this sort of general discussion of certain games I played, maybe movies and shows I watched, kind of bring back the Let's Talk series I used to do like 10 or so years ago. Um, like I mentioned before, I want to do like game reviews and stuff, but I ran into the issue of I don't have the ability to save a lot of footage. I basically do like a juggling act a lot of how many videos I can hold on to before I have to delete them. So it's hard to really hold on to, let's say, 30, 40, 50, 80, 100 hours of footage when I also have to keep in mind all of like the videos I'm recording for general YouTube stream, that sort of stuff. Um, so until I can basically afford a capture card, or not a capture card, a external hard drive or something that can store like 1 or 2 terabytes worth of footage, I figured it'd be fun. One to kind of like shake that rust off, and two, just to kind of just talk about stuff because I play games in my free time. Obviously, I stream stuff, do Let's Plays, and typically I'll talk about those during those. But I do stuff in my free time, and I don't always get a chance to talk about these experiences, these games I play because I just never really think about bringing them up during a Let's Play or a stream. Sometimes they're very niche. It's one of those things where I don't want to just bring up randomly. So I figured do this kind of like style, kind of loose. Probably not going to have any background music to start. If people really need it, I'll add it. Uh, Most likely, I expect people to kind of just put me on in the background while they're watching something else, playing something else, doing something. So I don't want to have my music conflict with like the music from whatever they're doing. Um, So if people are like, "Hey, we need music," I'll look into it. I also don't want to give those stupid scammers more reason to flag me. Like I've literally been flagged by just talking before. It is easier to dispute that my voice is owned by me when I don't have background music going. So, but if people are like, "Hey, we need music," I'll start adding music into these. But just kind of keeping this loose, kind of free balling. I might have a little like notes here and there. I do have notes, um, but for the most part, loosey goosey, free balling. Um, kind of just getting my ideas out there, starting a conversation about this game or maybe games of this genre or whatever the topic is about. And today, my topic is, or the game I want to talk about is Tactics Ogre Reborn. This is a game I put over 200 hours into, and though I have a better idea as of why now, because I've recorded this 2 times now, um, I'm still not 100%. And that's the weird thing with this game. I put a lot of time into this game. A lot of time. I beat this game 3.5 times. Um, or I guess you want to be technical, 2.5 times, and then I played through half the game. I'll go into more of like what I mean by that in a minute. But basically, if you don't know what this is a tactical RPG. It's a remake of an older game. I want to say for like the Nintendo, but I don't know the information. I don't know the details of the original. I only know this one. So if someone has played the original, sound out in in the comments, let me know the changes that they did, because I'd be genuinely interested. Maybe my issues I had with this game were actually changes they did. Maybe if people know, like, maybe the Japanese version, or like just like certain elements made more sense there and not here. Let me know. I'm always interested in this stuff. Now, I also understand some of what I say, and even just saying that I spent 200 hours in this game and I don't know why. It might make it sound like I don't like this game, or I hate it, or I wouldn't recommend it. It's a trash game, whatever. I don't think that. Like, usually if I put a lot of time into something, there's a reason for it. And there's, in a lot of cases, I don't. I rarely ever think a game is bad. I may think like certain elements don't work. Maybe a game just isn't for me. But it's rare that I think a game is bad unless it's like technically, like, on a technical level, like the game does not work, or like it doesn't live up to like certain like standards that like other games of its type have, given their budget and resources or that sort of stuff. So if this is like your favorite game, I'm not. This isn't like a dig at you. This isn't me being like you're wrong for loving this game. I can see why people do. Like, as I said, I put a lot of time into this game, and because of that, I have a lot of thoughts. But like, the reason why I say I don't know why I love it is because there were many times where, I'm getting into it, I'm enjoying it, and then there's times where my wife would be like, "Are you even enjoying yourself? Like, are you even having fun with the game?" I'm like, "I don't know." I didn't know. My camera was struggling with that for a second there. I don't know. 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 I don't know what was going on. And like and I think a lot of it is a lot of conflicting issues. So like, as a whole, I think the game is solid. It does a great job at doing what it's doing. But I think a lot of the elements in the game are either not implemented well, or as well as they could be. This could be an issue with it being an older game being remastered, or it could just be because it's not for me. And I'm totally able to admit that it just might not be a me thing. But I do love tactical RPGs. I played quite a bit of Final Fantasy Tactics in my day. I had the PSP version. I got to the fight that if you basically don't do an alternate save before, it can end your run. It ended my run. So that was the game that taught me to always have 2, 3, 8 different saves, on top of also being a less player and might needing to rewind the clock a little bit. But yeah, that was the game that taught me early on to like save. But yeah, I love tactical RPGs. Some of you guys may have seen I did some videos of like Disgaea. I love the Disgaea series. I played two. Have I played 3? I recently just played 4. I played through 5. Like, honestly, I played through 1 as well, like a bunch of times. I have like a bunch of different like remakes of that game. So like, I like a lot of like tactical games. I obviously play like D&D and stuff like that, so I'm not new to the genre. But yeah, like, I do really enjoy this game. Also, I do have ADHD, so if I go all over the place, that's just how my brain works. There will be probably things I bring up, and we never talk about again. But if there are ever any things you want me to, go into more, maybe I had a topic that you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then I drop it, let me know. I'll do like a follow-up video. If people bring up a lot of like important, like interesting information that I don't know, or maybe I want to be like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe I'll look into some stuff. Maybe I'll do like a little like sneaky part to this as well. We'll see. But yeah, so let's kind of just get into the game. I'm not going to do a lot of spoilers early on. Um, it's hard to really talk about like mechanics and stuff without spoiling a lot of things. So if you're just someone who's just like, I don't want to hear about anything, then might want to step away from this. But there's only really one character in the game, Kashua, that I'm going to talk about heavily, just due to her whole character arc. When that comes up, I'll be like, "Hey, warning, step away." Um, this Kashua is a big component of my issues with the game. Um, so if you're like genuinely I'm assuming if you're interested in my opinions on her, you probably played the game, and if you don't want to get spoilers, then you know, so be it. When that time comes up, I'll let you know, and if I remember during editing, I'll put like a timestamp on when the video will be done. That so that's kind of start. So yeah, I did enjoy this game a lot. So I loved for the most part the combat. I'll put a pin in that, but I loved the combat for the most part. When battles went well, they really felt good. I loved how flexible your party could be. Being able to recruit like pretty much anyone. Slight caveat, like slight little thing. It's not like a big issue later on, but it was a little weird that like you're able to recruit Seraphs early on and they don't show up ever. I literally looked it up and apparently they don't show up until like post game, so it's just kind of like, why do you get this ability like level 3 or something like that? But yeah, I do love that you can recruit so many different units. Like any game, I get to like have a fairy in my party, or play as a fairy, or have a lizard man. I'm happy. I don't know why. I just like playing those creatures. So in this game, you can have fairies in your party. You can have lizard men in your party, and they're good. Like I really felt like none of like the races or the classes felt absolutely useless. Like there were some that were clearly better, um, and there were some that I felt like the game tried to force you to use at times where I don't think they were needed, and I'll go into that more later as well. But like, I love that they were viable. I love that everything was usable. Also, a quick little thing to kind of like give people an idea of like how much I played this game. My first playthrough I didn't finish. I got to uh the one fight in chapter 3 where you fight like the beast tamer in the chaotic route, and you're in like the volcano area, and he has like the two cockatrices and the two griffins. And even with like the petrify resistance, I kept on getting petrified. uh I I all my characters were doing like shit damage, and I felt like I was doing something wrong, even though they were like at the level cap for that area, and I was just genuinely confused, conflicted. I felt like something was going on, so I put the game down, didn't touch it for a year, got back into it this year, in 2025, and I was like, because so you may know, I had my floor replaced in my basement, so I had like 4 months where I couldn't use my office, so I played a bunch of games, which I also wouldn't mind talking about as well. But this Tactics Ogre was one of the ones I decided to revisit. I also played through Disgaea 4 for the first time. So yeah, so I originally played, Denim was a Knight. During my new playthrough, fresh start, I tried to avoid looking stuff up as much as I could, because I don't like to do that. I don't like to have like a walkthrough next to me while I'm playing a game. To me, I might as well not even play the game at that point. I might as well just watch somebody else play it. Which, don't get me wrong, I love watching people play games. But if I'm gonna do that, I might as well just watch someone else play it. So I don't typically look stuff up unless I need to. So I was trying to stick pretty close to the not really save scumming if I could help it. Or looking stuff up. And for the most part, I stuck to that pretty well. I eventually became like a Dread Knight. That was like my main class. And there were moments in it as well where I felt like a lot of the classes kind of dropped off, but I'll get into that more later. And there's a point later on where you make an important decision, and this is a big issue I have with the game, so I'll put a pin in that what that decision is. That'll be in the spoiler section later. But there's a decision that determines whether or not a character lives or dies. And originally, that character didn't make it. So I was perfectly willing to accept that character's death and move on. I was pretty sure I saved over the fight before, because I typically had a save for overworld map, and I had a save for in the dungeons level. So like when you're raiding a castle and that sort of stuff. And like the woods, whatever they're called, the Pharaoh's Woods or Wild Woods or something like that. I had like a separate like save 2 for those areas, and then like a third save just in case. But typically I would use the main 2 and the third if I felt like I couldn't save over the first 2, if that makes sense. So I saved before the fight, went in, character died, and I was like, okay, whatever. I went about the game. I did a bunch of I did a bunch of fights to get to the I think you invade Heim or something like that. I can't remember. You go back to Heim quite a bit. But anyways, you get to choose between like going to the desert or like another area. You do that, then you go to this area and you go in, whatever. And during all that, it's like 2 or 3 fights. I decided, was I able to save that character? Like in some ways, I felt like I wasn't able to, but you had a whole scene early on with a character I'm not going to mention yet who says to save that character. So I'm like, there must be a way. So I looked it up, and there was a way. It was a real dumb. Once again, I'll get into this later. But I was like, okay, maybe if I decide to play this game in the future, I would do that. So I kept playing through. I got through all those levels, and at some point when I got into the new like dungeon zone, I went to save, and this is when I realized, oh, I haven't actually saved over that previous area yet. So I was just like, do I retry? Do I attempt to do this again and try and save that character? Um, I hit and hawed for a little bit, and I was like, let's try it. I haven't really done any of the type of save scumming with this game so far. So let's try it. This character seemed very important, and I know there's like multiple endings with this game, so it's like let's try it. This might allow me to get another ending pretty quickly. So I went back and I gave myself the caveat of one attempt. One attempt. I followed like a bit of like a walkthrough, but as we know, sometimes walkthroughs aren't always accurate. But I was like, what? And like the messages I was receiving for the answers was a little mixed. But I was like, one more attempt. I went in, did the fight, we got to the decision, and I saved the character. So now I essentially had 2 routes, where Denim is the only survivor, the other is where other character survives. So I purposely I decided to stick with the run where character survives. I got that to the end, and during that run, I was a Dread Knight. When I went back to after I beat the game, I went back to basically beat the game from that point on. So I continued, or when you do that, you unlock the Lord class. So I switched from Dread Knight to Lord, finished that, got the ending for both. So that's why I said it was like 3.5, maybe 2.5 if you don't count me branching off as like me finishing the game, and a half maybe just because I excuse me, maybe a half just because I didn't beat the game. I got pretty far. That's why I say 2.5, like a 3.5, something like that times I beat the game. So yeah, so did that, beat the game essentially twice, and I was like, I think I'm good. And then at some point I was like, let's dip our toes into a lawful run. So, oh yeah, so the first two routes was chaotic, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. So then I was like, let's do a lawful run. I wasn't planning to like beat the game. I just want to get to the point where just to see like what was different. So I loaded up a character. I decided to start off as a rune knight. I switched over to ninja slash shinobi when I was able to, just to try some stuff out. Do something different. And I ended up beating the game again. So yeah, that's all the times I beat the game, and throughout it, I did enjoy the combat. I had a lot of fun with it, but yeah, there were moments where I just didn't enjoy myself, but I also didn't want to stop playing. And I think it was because the stuff I really enjoyed really stuck with me. So as I said, when the combat was working and flowing and working well, I really enjoyed it. When and like I also really enjoyed for the most part the story and the characters. Mostly the characters. I felt like the story it was it was solid. Like there was some solid writing, there was some solid moments. Uh but I feel like this game really shone with a lot of the character writing. Once again, for the most part, there's some characters I don't love. Kashua. But for the most part, I enjoyed a lot of the writing. Um, like I enjoyed Denim as the main character. I felt like his motives were pretty strong. Whether you went the chaotic route or the lawful route, I enjoyed just how both routes felt like they could come from the same character. Because you can almost imagine yourself in the shoes of Denim in the moment early on that determines what route you take. Like slight spoiler, but nothing too major. Say end of chapter 1. This basically decides whether or not you are lawful or chaotic, and it's something that I did enjoy. That like essentially you are given an option where you have to decide whether or not you're going to kill a bunch of Wallacers, basically people of your own blood, and frame it on, I want to say Balbamusa, or is that the place we're at? No, I think we killed people at Balbamusa to frame it on Galgastani. That was it. Um, so basically, you go to Balbamusa and you're given an option of either killing all these innocent people, and framing it on Balbamusa on Galgastani, or not killing them. And if you choose to not kill them, you're technically chaotic. So in a way, choosing like the good option is actually putting you down the chaotic route, which I kind of liked. And like the lawful route is you literally killing them because you're following the orders of the law, like you're a ruler. So I kind of like that division, but I like that no matter what route you went, denim felt like denim, and that's an issue I had with Vice, and that's an issue I had with Kashua. Though Kashua is the same in both like story beats, um, Vice is different. Like his personality changes, and I'll go into that later as well. But yeah, I enjoyed for the most part Denim as a character. I loved a lot of like the random NPCs you encounter are cool. Some of which you can recruit. Like I loved Canopus. He's a bro. He's great. He's awesome. Um, there were just a lot of like character dialogue. Like there's two Lancelots in the game. Good Lancelot, bad Lancelot, essentially. One's a Holy Knight, one's a Dread Knight. Holy Knight's good, Dread Knight's bad, or or Dark Knight's bad. Simple. Um, so like there's a moment early on with Denim talking to good Lancelot, and he's talking about how his wife passed away, and he has this music box as like a keepsake to, you know, remember her and to think of her, and as much as he wants to like die because like he misses her and he wants to see her again, he can't die because it's just not his time kind of thing. And there's little moments like that that's just like, and I guess I could have said slight spoiler, but honestly, me saying it doesn't really spoil the scene, if that makes sense. It's not like it's like a big character reveal or something like that. I feel like those little moments in it, the little moments where like maybe Canopus is joking with Denim, or the little moments where like honestly Canopus like the kind of he was an arrogant asshole, but he was a loyal friend who was also an arrogant asshole. You know, like there's just little moments where characters are joking, getting along, like so many random like NPCs, like you know, not NPCs, like just characters that you encounter throughout either run. Like there's like the four sisters you can recruit at some point. I don't know if you can recruit all of them in a single playthrough, but there's like Olivia, um, Sherry. Blank. I always blank on the other two. But yeah, like they're great. I loved Olivia's role, how she knew Denim. Um, and like there's a lot of like little hints throughout it as well that do point to some story elements being revealed later. So like yeah, I just loved everyone's sort of interaction, everyone's character. There's moments like in the chaotic route. So there's uh a level where like I think in chapter 2 where you're in this aqueduct. And you actually do this level whether you're in lawful or chaotic. If you're in chaotic, you fight this one like bounty hunter character, and I loved him. I thought he was great. He has like the voice actor who really also the voice acting. The voice acting in this game is pretty great. There's a few like throwaway characters where I laughed out loud because I thought the voice was not fitting, but I don't like none of the voice acting felt bad, especially for like the main characters. Like it felt good, and this character, this bounty hunter character, I loved his energy. I loved his personality. He's just like, hey, nothing against you. I have to pay the bills essentially. So you might be right. You might be getting framed, but you're also worth a lot of money. So we're just gonna do this. And then it's just like, all right, two arms, I guess. You know, like I was like, man, I wish I could like recruit this character. I would love to have him in my team. And you can recruit him in the lawful route, which is kind of awesome. Like I love that a lot. And then there's some characters as well that you can't recruit no matter what you do, but they have such like good motive. Like there's a character in like this snowy biome area, I think in chapter 3, where he's just like, he knows he's lost. He's not gonna win, and then I'm just like, give up, and he's like, I can't, because if I, like, would you do the same if you were in my shoes? Like, I can't do that, even if you don't mean us harm. I can't also lay down my arms, kind of thing. And I thought that was also well written. But yeah, there were a lot of moments where I'm just like, damn, that's a good line, or that's like, I laughed out loud and stuff like that. Like, it's genuinely the characters, I think, is what made this game feel so good. And also a lot of the artwork was also solid. I loved like a lot of like the character designs, even like the default characters. I felt like they were solid. They all looked and felt like they fit in the world. Nothing felt like it didn't work. Um, the art was very beautiful. Like the pixel art was nice. I had some issue with like the map level layout. Sometimes they were kind of hard to read given like the camera angle, but you can kind of like rewind time pretty easily. I didn't use that feature a lot, but in moments where I just didn't understand how deep an area was, and like there is like an elevation count, like a number in like the corner when you're moving your characters, but in my mind, like the difference between like 3 and like 5 isn't too drastic, and sometimes that difference was enough to like make it so a character was just stuck in a pit. Um, so it was it could have been hard to like see stuff, but like for the most part, I love the art. I love the character design. Like it's something that I'm actually gonna like do a little bit of like art studies on, because I did genuinely enjoy the art. Like it had that like dark fantasy, not like horror dark, but just kind of like more grittier reality fantasy vibe to it, which I enjoyed. I'm not gonna go too much into the music, mostly just because I'm not really a music guy. I feel like if you want like know more about the music, I'm not the person you want to go to. Like I enjoyed it. There's no tracks where I'm just like, this is awful, this is shit, or like, the sound effects were good, stuff felt right. Voice acting was like solid, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, as for music, nothing really crazy noteworthy. Um, like nothing sounded bad, or there's no like weird audio pops or anything like that either while playing. It was pretty solid. Um, and fun little thing, and something that I enjoyed about the game as well, is that because you can recruit pretty much anyone except for like bosses, like the targets essentially, unless some you can't, like if you don't kill them, but only certain characters are that way. But anyways, um, but for the most part, you can recruit random characters, and I had a run where in that same aqueduct level, I'm struggling. This is where you first encountered like the Dread Knights. I was dead as a knight, at this point, and I was like, okay, I'm in trouble. Excuse me. Maybe I can recruit this character. I had like a 20% chance, maybe 30, something like that. Honestly, it might even been less. And I'm like, you know what? Hail Mary. Let's recruit this character. Worst, like if I don't, I might. Either way, I might need to like restart anyways. But let's just, and like this might have been the run where I failed originally, and like I gave up. So like, yeah, I think this was the run I gave up, and then it eventually dropped that run. But I went to recruit him, and it worked. I recruited him in a fight that I was pretty thoroughly losing, and because I had that extra guy, and it was like a Dread Knight that I haven't used before, and they were fucking me up in this fight, I now basically had like this extra asset, and I remember just being like, "Damn, this is awesome! Like this is so cool!" And like, I think this is also one of the first fights early on where you can recruit lizardmen. So I also recruited, I think, a lizardman during this fight, or maybe a later one. But yeah, I just remember that moment being like, it felt like it. Like if you ever play D&D, it felt like those moments where you try to do just like a silly thing during a session. The DM lets you roll for it. You roll great, and suddenly you now have a new ally, a new random, random companion that you didn't that the DM didn't plan for, but now you have them, and that's what this felt like to me. It's like now I don't want to lose. Like when I was pretty much ready to like just restart the fight, now I'm like, no, we just recruited this character. I think his name was Daryl. Like, we just recruited this guy. I can't quit. Like this is such a good like story, uh, like moment. I can't just drop it. So I get through the fight and I did it. It was awesome. It was great. And like there's a lot of little moments like that where it felt genuinely good to like recruit these like new allies and stuff. And like there's just little moments where like, ooh, I might lose this fight, but let's try this tactic, and it worked. So yeah, little moments like that were great, and really overall, like just a good time. And like it's funny too. Like I'm gonna get into my issues, but it's so funny that despite kind of having a weird love-hate relationship with this game, I'm still dreaming about it in a weird way. Like it's one of those things where I'm just like, I have a dream from just playing the game kind of thing, and I still wouldn't be against playing it again. Maybe not right away, but I could see myself playing it again. And I think it's just because of the character stuff. Slight spoiler: there is a way to save good Lancelot later on in the game. I tried to do this during my lawful playthrough. Like you apparently have to like go to a certain location, but it's very specific as of when. And after every like little like story mission I did, I went back to like I basically ran around the map in the hopes of like getting the encounter to happen. And after about four or five different fights, doing a fight, doing the loop, not working again, I think I stopped playing that night and I completely forgot to do that again. And I must have missed my chance of like saving him. So in all my attempts, I didn't save him, which is kind of like if you know, and it's very sad what happens to good Lancelot. Um, but I could see myself playing the game again where I actually do save the guy. But like, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed so much of this game, and I would love to like do different like play different classes, have different team makeups and stuff like that. Like, thoroughly enjoyed it. Resume. Now, let's talk about what didn't work for me. And I'll go into why as well. I'm not going to be like, this stuff sucks and blah. So, let's start with like some of the combat stuff first. So, the biggest one, the one where I'm like, this is kind of awful, was how the MP system worked. So, for those who haven't played, and maybe a refresher for those who have, essentially all your characters start with 0 MP. Every turn they gain like I don't know, around like 10 or so per turn, and mages and priests will will have an ability called meditate, and this ability will allow them to get more MP. I think it's like good like 30, 40, even 50 sometimes, like depending on like how much you leveled it up. Like it's pretty much integral. Like if you don't have this equipped to your mages, you might as well not bring them. Like that's how integral it is. Which is also kind of a little issue I have with them, because all your characters you can equip 4 skills. So you can kind of have like maybe a couple nights, one night dedicated to this thing and another night dedicated to this thing, or you can like swap them as your fights are needed. But the issue I had with the MP system and the skill is the fact that it was pretty much mandatory. The other issue I had is that this skill often, like, it doesn't always proc, it doesn't always trigger. And this can be a problem, because if it doesn't proc, your mages can't cast spells, your healers can't heal. And these, like, it could not, like, it might not proc for multiple turns. I've had up to like 8 times it didn't proc with like the skill cards to do it. So a little mechanic in the game to add a bit of randomness is these random like cards will pop up, and you could pick up these cards and they would boost your stats. Like a sword would increase your attack power, you can increase your magic power, crit chance, skill activation, MP regain, so on and so forth. And MP regain and skill proc were the big ones for mages. So I've had it where I've had like a mage with like 2 different, two separate skill proc increases, and it didn't work. Like for multiple turns, like out of like 8 turns, let's say like one of them it worked, and that can suck, because essentially you have a character who can't fight because they don't deal damage. The only way that they're really good is if they're healing or casting spells. And that character is basically sitting in the corner doing nothing. Like, I was gonna say jerking off, but that would have been doing something. They're literally doing nothing. They're just standing there. And a mechanic in the game is every action you do, even just moving your character one space, could make it so that character acts later in the timeline. So what I think the game wants you to do is to literally just have your mages stand still for like a bunch of turns to gain a bunch of magic, and then they're ready to fight. The issue with this is that you're now spending multiple turns doing nothing with your mages, and some of the maps can be pretty big. So you want to kind of be somewhat positioning your units to have like a more advantageous, position. And when you're basically struggling between, I can't really move this unit, but also I need them to be moved, it makes it difficult to like really strategize. And like I get like I think this is like supposed to add like more randomness to the game, and make you have to like rethink your plan so you don't do the same thing over and over. So in a way I can appreciate it for that. It did make me have to think on my feet. But as I said, the issue that I had with this is that it can make it so your unit is useless. Like there were moments where I was legit like, do I even bring clerics anymore? Do I even bring spellcasters? Like, is it better I just use the rune knights because they can do damage and they can cast spells? Is it better if I just use the knights and just use their healing spells? It does get to a point later where like clerics get a Mother's Blessing skill, and that basically makes it so their heals do double healing, which is also essentially mandatory, and at later levels is necessary a lot of the time. It also makes it so that like even when you do have the ability to heal, now it doesn't feel as good because they're not healing as much. Like they were very like the game's pretty lenient early on with how much healing you have, like how much the heals do in comparison to your health, but then as the game goes on, it almost makes it harder to heal because you don't have as much healing potential unless you get lucky. Which I guess it does make it battles, a way to make battles more difficult. But yeah, there were like little issues here and there with that because it did make it so that like okay, I kind of want to just top off my character for like the 100 or so that they need, but now my healer has Mother's Blessing, and I don't want to waste a 400 heal for like 75 health, you know. So I don't know. It was just like small thing there, but yeah, I don't like how the MP system worked. And an issue I have with this is that a lot of the time your opponent's units, they're able to wait 5, 6, 7 turns, and to make matters worse, those units will typically have a MP recovery item, like a magical leaf. I can't remember what they're called, but basically they have a heal item that gives them like 10, 20, however much MP. And once again, if those things were available to me, I wouldn't have an issue. Like if I could just go to the game's like the store in the game, buy MP recovery items and use them myself, wouldn't really have an issue with this MP system. I would have a way to like counterbalance it if things got rough. But from what I looked up and from what I experienced literally beating the game 3 times, you don't like you can't buy MP recovery items. You have to basically grind them out. And considering battles take anywhere between 20 minutes for like shorter, quicker ones, honestly, it was rare I ever did like a 20-minute fight. Most of them were like 30 minutes to 45 minutes, some even an hour. The final boss is probably like an hour or two, depending on how prepared you are for it. So, and it might also require like a replay if you don't have a certain ability equipped. But, so like if you're trying to like grind for these MP items, the odds of you getting them is somewhat slim. Like I'm sure there's ways to like increase your odds of getting them. Maybe certain maps, if you look it up, that have a higher odds of getting them. But for my most part, I might get like an MP item 1 out of every like 2 to 3 fights. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get 2. So if you're purposely trying to grind these out, you're now not like they're a rare item that you're also spending time to get. So that makes using them feel even worse. It's like, oh well, my mage hasn't procced for 4 turns in a row. I guess I have to use this, MP item, which is basically sacrificing an hour of your life and your time to get just to be able to be viable for this fight or get 1 spell off. And then if you use that and you're still not proccing your ability, it still kind of sucks. So I think just making it so you could just buy MP items would have been just a way to make it so the MP system worked and there was a way to counterbalance it. But basically what happened, at least for me, was that like when I got MP healing item, I did give them to my units, and if I used it as like a break in case of emergency. So as I said, if my units just weren't getting what they needed, or if I needed like let's say one of my melee units to do like a really strong attack, and this attack was kind of crucial for my plan, I would use the MP item to make sure that they had the MP to use it. But as I said, it was a break in case of emergency option, and not I have this as a tool I can rely on. Which could be cool, but because of just how long the fights took, it really made it so it was an advantage for the opponent and less of an advantage for the player. And like, even if they were expensive, like even if like early on, like a revive, I think is like 2,000. If the MP healing item for even like 1,000 or 1,500 or something like that, or even 2,000 if they really want to be expensive with them, it would have been annoying, but at least it would have been like, okay, it will take less grinding if I want to grind these out, and I can make sure I purchase one or two or so when I sell all my loot, and be able to just have them on hand if I needed them, and then upgrade them down the road when I get crafting. So like, yeah, that wouldn't have been an issue, but because you can't, and maybe there was a way. Maybe Google lied to me. Maybe you have to do a very certain thing. But I did as much of the side stuff as I could during the lawful playthrough. I even recruited Pirate Guy, and I went into like the Dead Palace area and got the Mage Guy from there. And I also recruited Ozone? Ozian? I can't remember. This girl who has a dragon. Like I recruited like a bunch of like side characters in the main, and like the lawful route. Maybe I kind of forgot that was a thing in like the chaos route. So there's a chance that like maybe I just overlooked something in like the chaotic route, but it really just felt like they weren't available. I did read that they think they're available post game, but once again, I don't know how accurate that is. But even then, I don't think that counts. If you have to beat the game to have access to these items, that doesn't count. That's just, they're not in the game at that point. So yeah, that's my issue with like the MP part. Let's move on to one of my next issues. So, one of my next issues, and this is a small one, so I'll do this one first. So when you're playing a game, especially like a tactical game like this, like Fire Emblem is another one that I've played quite a bit. Usually when you go to attack, also sorry if my voice cuts out. I've been talking a lot, and I'm starting to feel it. But with most games, if you go to attack, you have a percentage. 100% chance to hit, 30% chance to hit, 80, that sort of thing. With this game, it can pop up, you have a 100% chance to hit. And sometimes it won't. So even at 100%, your attacks can fail. The reason is they don't factor in like the parry buff that like shields and certain armors and weapons give. They don't factor that in. That's like a sneaky bonus thing. And once again, I think a theme of this game is they're trying to add random elements to the game, so there's no like guarantee. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to add a little bit of random spice to make battles don't like not feel the same. The issue is that imagine if you were like playing chess and or like checkers or whatever, or any tactical game, and you're like, I'm going to take your piece. I'm going to do this thing. And there's just a hidden rule where you can't. Or like, there's like a 10% chance that the opponent can just say, and you fail. You don't do it. And now your piece is lost instead or something like that, Like, sure, that could be fun for like a little like thing, like if you just want to like play around a chess and have that rule, and you're just like, I'm gonna roll a d20, and if a 20 pops up, you die instead of me, kind of thing. Like that could be fun. But when you're playing a game like this, where battles can take like 45 minutes, they can kind of lead on, and you're like, okay, let's try and like take out as many units as I can, trim the herd essentially. And you have a 100% chance, and initially at first, I wasn't quite catching on. I was like, oh, I thought that was a 100% chance, but okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just misread it. Um, but yeah, it doesn't let you know. Like thinking like like your character name or like the opponent like above your name, it'll show like what buffs they get. But I'm not gonna like look into a lot of stuff, and sometimes I couldn't even see what the buffs did even under their conditions. So a lot of the times I was just kind of winging it, like what these buffs and stuff meant. Um, so like you do get some warning if you know like what the little icons mean, but yeah, it just felt kind of annoying. Like it was cool sometimes when like, oh no, Dan's about to die. He's like one hit away from dying, and then he parries, and it's like, yeah, that's awesome. But it's also annoying because sometimes you have 100% chance to hit a guy, and he's down to like 30 health, and you're like, okay, I'm a ninja. I get 2 hits. I'm gonna hit you. Parried. 100% chance hit. Parry. Parry. What? What? Okay, I guess I have to like use another unit to hit this character. Parry. What? What do you mean? So it does add that element of randomness, which I can see as people loving. And talking about it, it makes me laugh. It's funny to think about. But in the moment, it's like, fuck you, game. Like, come on. And like it made it so like it was like really hard to really plan out. And I think that was the intent. As I said, I think that's the intent to make it so don't do reckless moves unless you like there's no sure 100% chance of that succeeding, you know? So like don't be reckless, play smart. And but there are moments in the game where sometimes you might need to be a little reckless. And when you are told you have a 100% chance of success and you fail, essentially, you're just kind of like, why not just, or even just show me. Be like, you have a 100% chance to hit, your attack's going to hit, but there's a 20% chance of it getting parried. Cool. Give me that number. Let me know the information. If there's just a tiny little, like, icon, and if you're new to the game and you don't notice it, and it happens, it's kind of like, what the, just have it pop up. Be like, parry, whatever, or like have the little icon pop up with like 20%. Let me see that information as the player. Don't hide it from me, but kind of be like, well, it's there. You just weren't paying attention. Just give me the information. I think that would have made it way better. That way, I'm more aware going in, and I know what that little icon does in that moment. It's just basically like when the game basically shows you what your buffs are doing. Essentially, in this case, it's showing if an opponent unit goes to hit me, I know, hey, that buff I bought, that upgrade I did, is giving me this percentage of protection. Cool. Same as for the opponent. Let me know this information. Um, Small issue, but still, just it it can add to the frustration. So like, if your mages aren't proccing, and then you go to kill a unit, and then you get parried a bunch of times while trying to hit that unit, it all culminates to being very frustrating. And this leads to my third issue with the combat, and that's the bosses. So early on, and like throughout the game, a lot of fights will have like the target unit. This is the unit you want to take out to progress. And what units you take out does matter. If you care about end game stuff, you want to make sure you're not killing as many units as possible, because the more of a certain like race or clan that you kill, the more like the game does keep track of all that. So you want to make sure you don't kill everyone, but also if you kill people, they drop loot. So, uh, but like most fights will have the target you want to take out, like the leader. Early on, it's fine. The units are maybe a little tougher. Not really sure, but most of the time, you take them out, you move on, whatever. As you go, story characters will start to show up as bosses. Once again, fine. Or like very specific, like NPCs will start to show up as bosses, which is also fine. But that card system I mentioned earlier, and side thing, quick thing, I thought of the card system as almost like someone's morale. They're like their motivations during fight. Like they're feeling, they're getting into it. They're getting pumped. They're getting into it. They're getting in the zone. That's how I kind of saw the card system. So mechanically, you're picking up a card. In the game world, they're like getting sucked into the heat of the fight. Like if you ever like maybe been in a fight or just played a game, if you ever got in the zone while playing something, that's what I kind of see the cards as. I see it as like a morale boost. They're getting focused. They're in the zone. They're getting like they're feeling stronger. They're feeling more motivated. That's what I saw the cards as. But some bosses, once you get probably like chapter 2, start of chapter 3, these bosses will start to have 4 cards out the gate. And you might be like, whatever. It makes it tougher, and it does make the battles tougher. Those bosses more difficult. But essentially, what that does is, if you're lucky, that gives that unit, like the boss unit, essentially 4 turns head start. And that's if you're able to get 4 cards out the rip, and usually you can't. Realistically, that essentially gives the boss unit like an 8-turn head start. And typically they'll have like 1 or 2 attack boosts. Typically like a skill boost if they need it, and like an MP boost. That's typically like their loadout. If they're a spell user, they would have like typically like 1 or 2 spell increases and a skill increase and like an MP boost, that sort of thing. And then some users will have like 1 physical, 1 spell. Some will have like crit. That sort of thing. But most of the time, that was their loadout kind of thing. And this one made boss creatures, like, yes, they were more threatening, but I would have also rather they just made the boss fights more interesting. Like, just make them like their own like special unit and give them higher stats. I would have rather they had higher stats than have them essentially like get like this crazy buff and make it so like, yeah, they're a threat, but also when they hit my units, like some of them like legit will one shot you no matter what unit you use. Like, and some of them can hit multiple targets. And some of them will attack you before you like turn 1 before you even have a chance to react or go or do anything. So sometimes a unit will go before you have a chance to react. They can hit like 5 targets in a row. Somehow they have the mana to do this, and they will hit all 5 units for like 600 to 800 damage each. And you're like, well, I didn't have time to plan for that, avoid that, do anything. I guess that's like 2,500 damage to my side of the board. Thank you. So I feel like instead of like just giving them like essentially 100% like double damage from the start, just make their units stronger, and that way it doesn't feel as unfair. I think what you're supposed to do is, and I've done this a few times, where one of the cards that pop up is a red card with like a slash going through it. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take, you're supposed to like knock units into that red card and make them lose all their buffs. And a few times I was able to do this. Sometimes, a few times, and this did work, if you're playing, you could basically like turn your back to the boss and just be like, "Oh no!" I'm not looking. And make them like come up behind you to hit your character in the back, step in like the red card and lose their buffs. But this requires one, a red card to appear, and two, the opponent to do that. Three, another unit not stepping on the red card first. So making it so you kind of have to do this trick in order to make the fights fair isn't interesting, isn't fun, kind of frustrating, and like if it was just enemies are tougher for being tougher sake, I don't think I would have that big of an issue with it. It'd be annoying, but you know you push through, you revive what units go down, you do what you can, you get through, whatever. But and I have a few issues with these. There's little mini objectives at the start of every fight. Sometimes it's bring a certain class, so typically like archer, knight, ninja, occasionally that sort of thing. Um, and like later on, it'll ask for Kashiwa specific classes, or some story fights I've learned will ask for a class of a character that is story relevant for that area, which is kind of cool. There's a dragoon you recruit later in the lawful route where if he's in a fight that in like a certain fight you actually get like dialogue and can actually like recruit or progress a certain story. Um, and for those missions, it does say bring a dragoon with you, which is cool. I like that. The issue is that some of the reward, like, usually the rewards is like a charm sometimes to like change what element your character is, which is useful. Sometimes a charm to like increase like your stats, or just like a random item or whatnot, or more XP. But some fights have very rare items, especially later on. And some of these fights later on also have a quest of not using the rewind. So you kind of have to choose between, uh, like, they'll have a quest where it's like, don't die, but also don't rewind. And both of those will have a good reward. And typically, even if you try to not have a unit die, it's against a boss that can deal like 2,000 damage in one attack to basically instant killing anything. And you're just like, I guess I'm never going to rewind and just accept the fact that I'm not going to get this group heal level 2 because I guess I don't see a way that I can kill the boss unit unless I basically stall out the fight, pick up as many attack boosts as I can for all my units, and target just the boss unit while also not dying to the other units. So typically in these fights, I would just be like, okay, I won't rewind time. I guess I'll accept not getting that item. Learn later on that you can't buy the tier 2 like group heal until probably post game, I'm assuming. And then just be like, well, I guess this is it. And there's also like a staff or something like that you can get that's hidden, that's locked behind like the same mechanic. Um, so when you go into fights where the boss has all these buffs, they can basically one shot anyone. And now there's an added incentive of not dying in order to get this rare item. It just feels unfair. Like it feels like the game doesn't respect your time in that sense, and basically either wants you to constantly restart the fight from the beginning, hope RNG is on your side, and you get a bunch of attack cards that spawn near you, and hope that the opponent doesn't somehow just instant kill you anyways. Or you have to hope that your 100% chance to hit doesn't get parried, possibly multiple times. Like, there's a lot of like little random elements on top of this mechanic that make it just so much more frustrating. So all of this stuff kind of culminates into just this annoying, like, wouldn't be an issue if the rewards and stuff weren't kind of like locked, essentially, like behind getting them. Like, it's fine, like if you get it early and you can get it later, but these items are locked and you can't get them. I think it's like post game or something like that. So it's like, well, I guess fuck me then, right? So yeah, that's just kind of that. Like, it's a little bit of salt, a little bit of like bitterness, but also just kind of feels bad. And like, it's not like I'm never gonna play the game because of this type of thing. I can see why they did it, but I think I would have just rather they just made the boss unit stronger. So instead of just giving them like 100, 200% attack boost, I don't know like how much one attack card increases your attack by, but from what I saw, at least from my units, like a unit might go from like 110 damage to like 130 or 150, something like that. And I legit feel like it gave the opponent bosses like a bigger boost. Like, I felt like they already were buffed with the buffs on top of them, if that makes sense. Because I don't see how a boss unit, like maybe like 2 or 3 levels higher than you, even with the attack boost, a basic hit would do like 600 damage, or their counter would do like 400 damage. So I feel like their units got a buff, just like their class got an attack boost on top of doubling their attack with the cards. If that, like, I feel like one or the other. Ideally, just make the battle, like, make the unit tougher. Maybe make the battle a bit more interesting. I did notice sometimes, like, some of the maps felt samey. You did have to like revisit the same location multiple times. So you're basically fighting the same maps again and again. And like sometimes that, maybe making the fights a bit more interesting that way. Like, sometimes it did early on. Sometimes you might have a fight where there's a river, you might have to cross it and stuff like that, or you might have to like navigate around it, maybe use archery more. But yeah, for the most part, like, just making the fights more interesting, the bosses just stronger overall, but not essentially overpowered. It literally felt like they were cheating. Like, it felt like the game was cheating at a certain point. Like, you're aware that the game's cheating. You can't do anything really about it unless you get lucky, but it's still cheating nonetheless. Um, one more little bit with like the little side quest. So as I said, sometimes the quests will have you bring certain units. As I said, typically knight or archer. The issue is that archers pretty strong early game. Like, they're really good. A lot of units don't have a lot of defense. I even for a while had like some knights, and like I think Canopus pretty much all my playthroughs had a bow, just because having a ranged option is a good thing. It's nice to have, especially early game. And archers are really strong late game. They don't do a lot of damage initially, but they get some good skills. They have a sleep skill and like a charm attack. Basically, sleep shot, charm shot, essentially. That basically takes a unit out if you put them asleep, or turns a unit. Basically, either way, you're taking a unit out. One will put them on your side for a turn or two, and another one just put them asleep for like 3 or 4 turns. Really strong, but so many missions require you to have an archer. I say out of all the fights, I would say a good 20% of them, maybe more, require you to bring an archer. Once again, the rewards aren't always great, and there were a few times I'm just like, no. Like, this is literally, this is an uphill fight. My archer can't hit anything. They're just there. Like, that's the thing. They want you to bring an archer in fights where you're just like, why would I? Why would I bring an archer to a fight where they can't hit anything, they can't do anything, they're just there. Especially late mid game or later game even, where they're hitting pretty much every unit for 1 or 2. Some like lower defense unit like spellcasters that might hit them for 100, like clerics might hit them for 100, or like rune knights or something like that might hit them for like 50. But for the most part, they're not your damage dealers. They might soften something for you, but they're not your damage dealers. And they don't gain a lot of MP because they're not dealing a lot of damage, and you're just kind of waiting for them to have their skill procs. So in matches where it's literally an uphill fight, or where you're fighting like a bunch of knights and maybe like a couple squishier units, they're basically useless. And these are a lot of the fights where the game thinks an archer would be good, or they want to hint. Like sometimes I felt like the game was just like, this fight might be too easy if you don't bring an archer, so bring an archer with you. Or maybe they just, I think I did read this at one point. Archers might have been broken originally, and they nerfed them in this version. So there's a chance that maybe archers were overpowered originally, they got nerfed, and now in this game, an archer is kind of a liability sometimes. But yeah, some of those quests did require you to bring a certain class that was kind of useless. Like there were moments where like it might want you to bring a shinobi, for example. And even though my one run I was literally playing a shinobi as denim, sometimes you just don't have one ready, leveled, or have the ability to even have one. So it kind of sucks if you run into those fights. But also, it's just kind of like sometimes that's not the best unit to bring for the mission. And it could feel a little bad, a little rough. And a big issue I had was the knight one as well. So I kind of saw like knights were solid units, and then you can also get white knight in the later on. And I thought like maybe white knight was like the upgraded version of the knight. And I honestly felt like there was a few classes that were kind of just upgraded previous class. But when the game tells you to bring a knight, they mean just a knight. A white knight doesn't count. Dread knight doesn't count. Any other knight class doesn't count. Only knights. So later on, if maybe you don't have a knight leveled up, because like at some point during my lawful run, I got Ravnus, and she's awesome. I tried her as like a shinobi for a bit, but I ended up switching her back to white knight just because I never used the white knight, even though I had them in my chaotic playthrough. I was focusing like in that playthrough. I wasn't really using main characters. I was using my own characters. Like I basically put like my friends and stuff into the game, so I was using those characters instead of main characters. And you can't give white knight to non-specific units. Same as like hunter, I think. You can't give that. That's like a vice only or certain character only class. So I, lawful run. I was using Ravenous. There's no real need to bring a regular knight when white knight is basically knight on steroids, and they have velocity shift, which is just like fucking crazy good. So I was like, okay, maybe a white knight will count. Like if I don't get these rewards, whatever. But it should count. They're basically the same class. It doesn't. Like you have to bring a knight. So it does kind of encourage you to like have multiple leveled up units. And I think that's what the game wanted you to do. I think the game wanted you to have like multiple dragoons, multiple knights, multiple white knights, multiple of every class for every situation. And you could probably do that if you really wanted to. Maybe do some grinding or whatnot, or when your units are maxed out, bring some newer units in to level them up, kind of thing. Like I can see the game wanting you to do that, but for the most part, it didn't really feel like you need to. I typically brought like one of each unit if I could. Like denim was like whatever they were. I rarely brought 2 of a single unit unless it was like a cleric or mage. And eventually later on I would have like 1 like sorceress essentially in 1 sorceress or wizard, and the other golem specific, like um I'm blanking on it. Witch? I think witch and oh yeah, witch and something like that. I would have like 2 of like the alternate class. And at some point I did like experiment with the necromancy class when I got one. But yeah, like for the most part, I didn't really bring multiple of the same class. Especially like oddly enough, like dragoons, they they were fine. They killed very specific creatures well. But once you did, their damage didn't really, do good against like normal units. So I felt like only just bringing 1 was necessary, especially if you gave them like the buff everyone around you to kill this specific creature. Because every time that proc goes off, your other units are also now hitting like beasts or dragons for like shit ton of damage, and that was just pretty nice. But I never felt like you needed more. But I also like the fact that some people might be like, oh yeah, I would bring like this many. Being able to like be flexible is cool. So I'm not really gonna complain about that really, but that's just kind of what I felt like the game wanted you to do. I didn't feel like it was necessary to do it, and I think that's what they were planning their quest around. I also just have a feeling that maybe with the knight, they were just assuming Denim would always be a knight for some reason. But yeah, that's the combat. That's all that stuff out the way. Now let's move on to my issues with Vice. There won't be any real like story spoilers with Vice. I'm not gonna like spoil like what happens, where he goes, any of that stuff. I just want to talk about a very specific moment, very early on, when you make the decision of kill all the people or don't. And then my issue with Casual, which will be spoilers, but I will warn that when that time comes. So let's start with Vice to kind of just, cause my issues with him are pretty quick to get through. And once again, I don't think there's any spoilers here. Nothing that should like ruin the game for people, really. And honestly, my issue is both funny and an issue I have with these types of characters. So Vice, I feel like, is your rival character. No matter what path you choose, he's gonna change. If you go chaotic, so basically if you choose not to murder the people at Balmamusa, he turns like hair slicked back, all evil. He's all like, I'll kill them all. Then you would turn your back on your master. You would bite the hands that feed you or something like that. He's like, I've always hated you. And I think he kind of has a thing for Kashuo, so he's always like, Kashuo always picked you over me and sided with you, and I hated you, and I'm gonna enjoy killing you, or something like that. Like, he basically turns kind of psychotic, kind of has a murder boner, and just hates Denim. So, seeing that, and deciding to do a lawful route, was real funny, because I was like, oh, if he's all murder boner happy about killing people, if I go a lawful route, he'll join me like from the start. And I'm not gonna use him because fuck Vice. He is a racist asshole. Like, before this shift, he's a racist asshole. His shift into I'm gonna murder everybody was kind of felt right, because he was very much like sucking up to the Duke, and very much like, I'm not going to, like, I'm gonna like suck up to the Duke, do what he says, and like basically he hated everyone that wasn't Wallister. Basically a racist, just a racist asshole, really. So his shift in the chaotic run of him just being like, I always hated you and that sort of stuff, it felt right. That felt like something his character would do. It was a pretty drastic shift. Like it was like on the spin of a dime, he went from like a racist asshole to a murderous racist asshole kind of thing, like psychotic murderous racist asshole. Let's go there. Um, but if you go the lawful route and you as Denim decide to consent to murdering these people, Vice decides that he is now like basically Vice takes the role of Denim in the chaotic route, where Vice is now like, how could you kill these people? They're innocent. They did nothing. If you're gonna do this, I'll take you down. I'll take everyone down. And he basically becomes like the anti-hero. He basically gets, instead of in the chaotic route where Denim gets framed for the murders, Vice gets kind of framed for the murders, and he kind of runs the resistance of who like spreading like what actually went down essentially. Which is kind of cool, but his shift from like originally seeing him as psychotic murder boner racist asshole to him suddenly being a hero of the people was fucking hilarious. That shift, I laughed for a good like 5 minutes and could not play the game until I was done laughing. Like it was like it got me. It made me laugh. Now, my issue with this is because his character kind of shifts, it changes his personality essentially depending on what Denim chooses. It kind of makes his character kind of worse to me. Now, like, I could see a world where both of these personality stuffs are true. So let's say none of this war happened, and they just got to live out their lives. I could see a world where Vice maybe resents Denim a little bit because maybe he has a thing for Kashua, and there is a weird like a sort of a weird incest like feel to Denim and Kashua's relationship, at least with Kashua. I don't think Denim sees her that way, but there's a lot of moments where it feels like Kashua is more than family interested. Just let's just say that. So I could see a world where maybe Vice is jealous that Kashua takes Denim's side more. I could see a world where he's jealous of Denim. Maybe they have a rivalry. That's that. I don't have an issue with that. But and like I can I can see a world where he is, where he does have this heroic side, but he also has this vindictive, maybe judgmental side, and him having, racist, asshole-ish characteristics early on could all be character development, right? All this stuff could be true. My issue is how drastic of a shift it takes in both. So in the chaotic route, maybe there's a way he doesn't do this. But from what I looked up, I don't think you can recruit him in the chaotic run. But I also didn't do all the side stuff, so maybe you can. But from what I saw, his arc in the chaotic run is just like, I hate you, Denim. I'm gonna kill you, and blah 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 blah. Like, how dare you turn your back, and all this kind of stuff. Like, complete, like, as I said, he's a psychotic, murderous, racist asshole. Like, he that's his character in that. So I feel like just a drastic shift doesn't. I feel like it does his character a disservice because I feel like he has a character. There's something there, and I could see a little bit of both of these paths working out in an interesting way. The issue is because he does such a shift in character, it just doesn't feel as interesting to me. It makes his character feel kind of like not flat because he does have character, but it basically makes his character feel like it is completely dependent on them. Um, and like maybe there's some people in real life that like their personality revolves around somebody else. I'm sure that does happen. But for the purposes of the game, it felt just kinda unfinished, maybe a little wishy-washy, maybe just a little just I don't know. I just didn't like it. I don't really like this trope to begin with. This like, you know, this character will fit the mold of what the story needs. So rather than maybe making two interesting characters, they made one murky character. You know, the shove it into the role, we'll make it work. Um, so that's how I feel kind of with Vice. I kind of hate him because, as I said, his character is a racist asshole, and like that's just kind of who he is. And after you do recruit him in the lawful route, he doesn't really do much. He just is kind of there. He doesn't really participate in the story anymore. So that also adds to because like I actually did start using him because he does have a pretty good class. I use him quite a bit. Not every fight, but like I did use him, and I think I even used him in like the final boss fight as well. And like because he had like the lobber ability, which was pretty helpful for that fight, and he did do decent damage, but he just kind of was there. He didn't really do much like after you recruit him in the lawful route, and so his character really matters in the beginning and then becomes nothing at the end. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there's post game stuff, but I'm just talking about like main game, start to finish, no post stuff, and some like little side stuff in between. So yeah, that's just kind of generally my issue with Vice. I don't think he's a bad character. I just feel like he's just kind of there to fit whatever the writers need. And my issue, I think, is that there's a good character there, and they kind of didn't utilize the character enough, and it just kind of falls flat. And that's what I just don't like that character fits the mold. Essentially, they're there for the protagonist. In a game like this, where there's so much like behind the scenes, betrayal, planning, in the intrigue, a character who just kind of is there to support the main unit, like the main character, just doesn't feel as clever or interesting or good. That said, let's talk about Kashua. So, Red Wee Woo, spoilers, heads up. Hope I remember. Skip to this time. Here we go. Kashua sucks. I really don't like Kashua. I tried. Like, I think her design is great. She has a similar issue with Vice, where I think there's an incredible, interesting, thought-provoking, really good character here, and they fuck it up so bad, so hard. Like her whole arc feels like it is her reacting to her emotions through her whims and what the script needs her to do rather than what her character would actually possibly do. And I'm not so like with this in mind, I when it comes to like writing characters and stuff like that, because I do enjoy creating characters, I do enjoy writing characters. So this is something I feel like I can at least chime in a little bit on. When it comes to making a good character, And like, you know, if you play like character in D&D or whatever you do, it's a good rule to have where good people make mistakes, bad people can do good things. So, for a fun example, let's look at the Mario games. Mario can sometimes be an asshole to Luigi. He can sometimes maybe make mistakes. I mean, literally, the first Mario game that ever came out, all the toads got turned into blocks, and you break the blocks, right? Like, there's moments where Mario isn't always a good guy. But he is the hero, but he can sometimes make mistakes. There's also moments where Bowser and Mario team up, and they do good things, and maybe and sometimes they meet up for a round of tennis, you know, normal villain and hero stuff. But like, that's kind of the thing. So like, sometimes, let's say the hero might go along with the thieves' plan to steal this heirloom from this person. The hero wouldn't normally do this, but because they're going with their ally, they're doing something that they wouldn't normally do. They're, you know, breaking the law. They're doing whatever they have to do for the greater good. And this might be a mistake. This isn't normally what they would do. Maybe this leads to someone getting killed. So stuff happens, right? In let's say this you know scenario. I'm sure anyone watching can remember a time maybe they went against their morals. You know, maybe they did a thing that they wouldn't have normally done for a friend. Maybe they, you know, did something they regret. Maybe they stole a thing because of jealousy or of just because they thought they could. You know, we've all had some sort of moment like that. And then bad people can do good. You see this all the time. You see often people who aren't good people will donate money. Usually it's like make a good image, but still you see bad people sometimes will do good things. You know, in story, the villain might join the hero to take out a greater evil. Typically in those cases though, in both cases, the decision makes sense, and it does typically involve some sort of self-motivation. Usually the hero will think of like the greater good. Might be a little self-motivating, but typically the greater good, whereas the villain or anti-hero is very much like for their own good. But yeah, heroes can make mistakes, villains can do good things. So in this scenario with Kashiwa, some of the decisions she makes could be her making mistakes. That's fine. You know, people can do that. And it could be her just being confused, and I'll go into that later. But I don't think it is, and I will go into why. So, she her whole thing is she doesn't want Denim. She doesn't want to lose Denim. That's her whole thing. She does not want to be left behind. She doesn't want Denim to essentially abandon her. And really early on, what it meant was she didn't want Denim to die in the war. So she didn't want Denim to die, leave her alone. You know, her father died, her mother died, and she doesn't want to lose Denim and just be alone. That makes sense. And and I can also kind of see why sometimes their relationship is so oddly, uncomfortably close in a weird way. Let's just say it's very codependent. They're very codependent of each other, which can make sense. It can make sense because they lost their parents, they only had each other, they clung on to each other because of this. I think they were also very young when their parents died, so them clinging to each other makes sense, right? I know I said earlier that they kind of have an incest kind of vibe, but also I can see them being very close because of their shared grief, their shared loss, and that. So I understand where she's coming from early on. She doesn't want to lose her brother. Like, she wants revenge. She does want revenge for what happened. But she also knows that this revenge could lead to her losing her brother. And early on in the story, she decides that the revenge isn't worth it over losing her brother. And I didn't notice this my first playthrough. I only noticed this during my lawful playthrough before your decisions really impacted the story. Like the first encounter, like the first conversation you have with her, and you have a question, and she's like, "I don't want to lose you." In like the room before you go attack good Lancelot. Um, so I think early on she decides she doesn't want to lose Denim, and she's willing to accept the fact that like her parents are dead. She's going to accept that, and she doesn't want to lose Denim. And I think what we don't see, and I actually kind of thought this was the case originally until I replayed the game, where I thought she wanted revenge. I thought she was all for assassinating Lancelot or Bad Lancelot, and I, I thought that that's what she wanted. But I think that's what she originally wanted off camera. And then when we go into it, though she still kind of wants that, she doesn't want to lose Denim. So I get that. That's interesting. That's a good character. That's a good arc. That's a good like motive. That's a good driving force. So throughout the game, she kind of just doesn't want Denim to be involved. But what we kind of missed up until this point is Denim's in a position where like they're basically at a point now where like maybe at the very start of the game they could have went, okay, we're not doing this. But Denim's young, Vice is young. Vice is also very much like he does kind of have a murder boner in the beginning. Let's be honest, he wants to kill. He has a thirst for blood. So like maybe at the very start of the game, if Denim said yeah, they could have like ran and hid from the war and hid somewhere and maybe lived throughout the war and nothing bad would have happened. I actually would have liked that as like a possible ending if you could have chose at the very start of the game to not help try and do that first fight and then they just run off. That actually would have been cool. Kind of like with like I want to say Far Cry 5, where if you just wait 10 minutes, you get like a special ending. I think it would have been cool if you could have like gotten like a little special ending where they don't actually do the war, and then all the stuff that would have happened if Denim didn't participate happened. That would have been cool. But anyways, essentially, at this point throughout the game, she tries to get Denim to not participate, and after the big decision later on of kill the people or not, both times I'm pretty sure she does ask Denim to go AWOL. When you're in the chaotic route, you're being hunted, you're being tracked, you have a bounty on your head, and no matter where Denim goes, he is going to be hunted. And he doesn't want Kashawa to also be targeted. He doesn't want the people who died at Balbamusa to go unheard, essentially. So he's just very much like, I want to clear our name so we can live a happy life. And then, of course, he ends up kind of becoming like the figurehead of the resistance and kind of gets roped into the war that way. So I understand, like, Kashawa being like, run away, let's ignore this, let's go hide, let's just start our own life and not worry about this. And being like, we can't really do that because we're going to be hunted no matter what. And, like, I'd rather, like, if I'm going to be hunted, I want to try and at least clear the name and let people know that, like, it wasn't the Wallace, like, it wasn't the Galgastani that killed them. They're not a part of this. This is what happened. Like, he wants the truth told. So I get that. I understood that part. And then in the lawful route, her trying to convince Denim to go AWOL. She's like, hey, before we return to the castle, we can just run away. They'll just assume that we died. We can run away. And we can live a happy life. And Denim's like, no, we can't do that. Because we succeeded in our quest. We did what we had to do. If we go AWOL now, we're gonna have a bounty on our heads. We're gonna be hunted. We're gonna be like sought after and probably killed. Like, that's not good for us. I have to do what I started. Which also makes sense. Like, in this scenario, he's, this isn't the chaotic route. He is the hero Goliath. He is put on this pedestal. He can't go AWOL. He can't go hiding. People know what he looks like. They may not know exactly what he looks like, but they'll know of the hero Goliath. And once the flyers go out of, like, the bounties go out of what he looks like, his title, they'll know. So he really can't. He's not like just a random soldier. He is like the figurehead of this movement. So in both these scenarios, Denim doesn't like put down Koshua. He doesn't say, anything about leaving her behind, abandoning her, anything like that. He just says I can't do that. Like, he is very much like he's very logical in these moments. And like, at no point does it ever feel like he actually abandons or like ditches Koshua, either from the player's choice or Denim's just lines throughout, like, his choices essentially. He never 100% will agree with Koshua. There are moments throughout the story where you basically have to either go with her or basically tell her to shut up early on. And I thought those decisions may have affected stuff later on. They don't. But I thought they might have. But they don't. So basically, whether you agree with her the whole time, and Denim does his thing during the scenes where he does stuff, or you don't, he he may not always agree with her, but he never at one point tells her, "I'm leaving you behind. I'm abandoning you." In every fight you're in, she's with you. So it's not like she's at home at the castle and you're out. She's with you. So you can't even use that as an excuse of he's leaving her for long periods of time. She's with him. And there might be moments, maybe off camera, that where maybe Denim does a thing and comes back, but we don't see that. We don't really hear any of that stuff. So as far as we know, they're always together. So there's a point later on where after a big fight, Denim and Koshua in both stories, they're talking in like this hallway. And Koshua's like, "You abandoned me, you left me behind, you don't love me." And Denim's like, "What do you mean? Like, we have, from the day we've been born, we've never left each other's hips. Like, we've been together all the time. Like, I don't understand." And then Koshua runs away, and in a heat, like a fit of rage and passion, she runs off. And it's just like, okay, maybe she's coming to terms with the stuff or whatever. But at this point too, it doesn't feel warranted. Like, as I said, Denim doesn't always agree with her, but at no point has he ever abandoned her. At no point has he ever left her behind to do a mission. At no point has he ever said, "I don't want you around." So to have Koshua say this, and I get she is concerned about him dying. And there is also a thing that I do want to mention, which I'm going to get into now. So she runs away, and she's on a dock brooding in a rainstorm, because why would you not? And Dark Lancelot approaches her and goes, "You are the princess. You are the princess of this land, and you've been lied to, and your pendant proves it. And you know this because you as a Sibyl, as a cleric, should know how to read the language." And she basically, dismisses it at first, and then eventually accepts the fact and knows what he's talking about, because she has read it and she understood it. So you could argue that throughout the entirety of their brother-sister relationship, she's been at least a little aware that Denim's not actually her brother. So going back, you could theoretically see her essential initial fears and concerns of losing her brother could also stem from the fact that she knows they're not related. So there could be that stem of like, if I tell him this information, he will not be my, we won't be by blood, we won't be siblings, and he's going to abandon me. And she might not even want him participating in the war because of he might find out this information. So that does add a little bit of something interesting to Joshua. That does help build her character. But once again, I don't think they execute it well. So essentially, I'm assuming people watching this either know know the situation, but if you don't, Joshua joins Dark Lancelot. She basically joins the dark side. She joins Dark Vader. She joins the villain. And if she was doing it to get more information, like she was trying to like confirm that her theories were true. She clearly had doubts that she was, you know, she kind of knew she had doubts. So if she was trying to get information, that would have been one thing. If she was still planning to work with Denim, that would have been another thing as well, or still be there for Denim. But she doesn't. I think they dropped the ball with her character here because she 100% commits to joining the dark side. She actually does abandon Denim. And then you can say that she already thought that Denim abandoned her. We don't really have proof of that, but you could say she assumed that Denim abandoned her, so she joined the dark side because she was abandoned. But as I said, at no point with Denim has he actually done it. Maybe I missed something, but as I said, I played through the game a chunky amount of times, and none of the line of dialogue really implies this to me. So she actively joins the dark side, does actually abandon Denim. There's so like while you're playing, Denim is actively like distraught that he does hear rumors that his sister is with Lancelot, Dark Lancelot, and that like he wants to go rescue her. He wants to save her. He does hear rumors that she's with him willingly, but he's like, I can't accept that. I have to talk to her. I have to see her. I have to save her. Like, so when you get to the fight where you encounter her for the first time, and Denim's like, oh my god, you're here. Come on, you have to go with me. She tries to kill Denim. She pulls out a knife and tries to stab Denim. I am pretty sure that is the highest tier of abandonment. When you're actually actively trying to kill your brother, I know that Denim's not, but Denim doesn't know this at the time. Joshua does. But still, when you're actively trying to kill this person that you claim to love, I don't care how confused she is, that feels like a complete shift. Like, does she just go, oh, I'm the princess? Well, I guess I have to kill you now. She doesn't say that. She just goes to do it. And then she's kind of just following Dark Lancelot around like a dog. And it just doesn't feel. It doesn't make. Like, as I said, her character feels like she's reacting to what the scene needs and reacting off of her emotions. And this isn't necessarily bad. People react off their emotions all the time. But, like, I've had, like, I don't have siblings, but I've had, like, friendships that ended, some of them pretty badly. And even then, I never wanted to, like, cause physical harm to these people. I'm not like a violent person, and I'll admit I do have anger issues, but I never wanted to kill or harm the people I've known in my life who harm me back. And I don't. Maybe some people have had like bad relationships with their siblings, so maybe there could be some hostility there. But we know from the context of this game, of the story, of the relationship, that they had a good relationship. They were almost too codependent of each other to the point where they were like the same person essentially. You know what I mean? Like they were like joined at the hip. They were together. There's nothing separating them. And I have actually, I know people in my real life who were this like very close to their siblings like this, and then something happened in their friendship or like their relationship that caused them to shift apart. So I have seen this stuff to happen, but considering we're watching this happen and there's no real proof of this happen, it just feels like it just doesn't work for me. And her actively trying to kill Denim, and then there's a choice later that basically makes it so Kashawa joins in on the fight where you actually save her. So the first time you see her as she tries to kill you, that's not the fight where you save her. That's a fight where Denim finds out that Kashawa has joined the dark side. So later on, end of chapter 3, I want to say, is the fight where you save Kashawa. And on the way to that fight, you rescue an old man, and the old man, basically, before that, you find out your father is alive, and he is literally dying right now. So you meet up with your dad. Your dad's like, "This is the truth. I couldn't give up, Kashawa. I couldn't hand her over. I could have prevented this entire war if I gave Kashawa over to the king. But I couldn't do that because she called me dad. And I could not do that," which is great. Great writing. Amazing writing. I love the fact that, like, he admits that, like, this whole war, everything is kind of my fault. But, we find out that, like, Denim's dad had a daughter named Kashawa who passed away. And when Kashawa was born through the king, through the reasons, Denim's dad adopted Kashawa to basically keep her safe and hidden and that sort of stuff. So, once again, that's great. And him being like, you have to save her. You have to take care of her. She's the key to solving stuff. So, this is all good. Eventually, when you go to save her, there's a choice early on where you basically get to say whether or not she's in the fight or not. If you say like, oh, I could never hurt or harm my sister, which is the option I chose the first time, Kashawa's in the fight where you save her, and she's actively trying to kill you. If you choose if I have to kill her, I will, then she won't be in the fight, which is the option I chose the second time because she can deal a lot of damage, and I don't want to deal with that. So that choice determines whether or not the options you pick after the fight work. So basically, after you do the fight to save her, you rescue her, you're in a room, and she's all like, "You never loved me, you abandoned me, blah, 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 blah." And you have basically two dialogue choices. So option A, boop boop, option B, boop boop. And I believe like the order is like if you choose to not have her in the fight, you go option A and then option B. Like it like reverses. So like if the correct answer is A for the first option, then the second option is option B, and if it's B, then it's A. I think that's the case. I forget. But the thing is, you don't know this going in. So essentially, you have two 50-50 chances to save Kashawa. And you have to get both of these right, by the way. So if you get one answer correct and one answer wrong, you don't know which one you got right or wrong. You can't rewind the clock and redo it. You have to redo the entire battle beforehand again to get an extra chance at guessing. So this whole part is bullshit. And the thing is, if you don't say what Kashua wants to hear in this moment, and as I said, this changes depending on your option earlier, and both of them are basically like a lot of the options in this section are kind of, they don't feel quite right. Like some of them kind of work, like Denim just apologizing or something like that, or being like, "Hey, I'm sorry," or "I love you. Why I would never abandon you." That sort of stuff. So like you basically have to guess right, and if you don't, Kashua will kill herself. Like if you choose wrong, and you essentially have like a 10-25% chance of randomly guessing correctly unless you have a walkthrough. You basically, you're almost, unless you get super lucky, you're going to end up getting her killed because she will kill herself by being like, "Oh, you never loved me. I don't want to be a burden," and she kills herself. So this is also just stupid. This is just shitty design as a game. Shitty design is in character writing. Like, I don't have an issue if a character does this in a game. This stuff happens in real life, so it happening in a game is fine if it makes sense, and it doesn't make sense here because once again, if Denim did abandon her, he doesn't. If he did, I could see this working, but at no point do you have the option to abandon her in the game, and at no point does Denim actually do so. So her claiming all of this stuff and not wanting to be a burden, and I get, as someone who has in the past been suicidal, I understand that mindset. And you could argue that Kashua is not in a good mindset. That is clearly the case here. I don't think it's handled well. I don't think the reasoning is there. I don't think it quite works. And as a gameplay mechanic in this system, if you choose wrong, you can't just go back and try again. You have to do a 45-minute fight that has the issue I mentioned earlier, where there's a rare item, like there's two challenges, one's not die, one's not rewind, and they both have a good reward. And I think this is the one where you get like the super good like heal spell. Um, and if you like fail this questionnaire, essentially, you either have to choose to go back, do that fight again, and if you somehow manage to succeed in passing it, try and do that again, which might make the fight take even longer. And essentially attempt again. And once again, if you don't have a walkthrough, you did narrow down some options, but you don't know which option was correct. So you essentially have another 25 or less % chance to get it right. And the game doesn't tell you which one is correct or not. So you just, if you fail again and you want to save her, you got to keep doing this again. Like, this is not a good gameplay loop. This is not a good character writing development thing at all. Like, it is just bad through and through. And like, if you do end up recruiting her and you save her and she joins your side, it is quite sweet. She admits, like, I was wrong. I'm sorry I did this. And that could work. She did make a lot of mistakes. She did do some shitty things. And let's keep in mind, side thing, she was fully aware of the torture that was happening to Holy Knight Lancelot. She was fully aware of the torture. She knew exactly what was happening, where it was happening, and she was aware that he was being tortured. Even later on, when you find out that Lancelot is alive, like good Lancelot, but he is basically tortured to a point where he lost his sense of identity. She does have an ellipses, so she is. I think she's somewhat like conscious of, oh, this is kind of my fault, and then she leaves. Like she doesn't really say anything; she just leaves. Which once again could have been a good moment of character development, but they kind of just let it drop. They kind of like make it up to the player to connect the dots, which is fine, but like. So like, she has made a lot of mistakes. So this is a very heartfelt moment. She joins Denim and whatnot. Once again, good, could be better if her motives to this point made sense. And then she kind of just does a 180 and is now just gun ho. I'm the princess. I'm gonna lead the charge. Everyone, let's do this. And she's like, and then everyone's like, holy shit, like yeah, you're really fitting the role. She's like, I never felt so unnatural in my life. And it's like, really? Felt pretty natural to me. Like this whole time, you've been kind of like changing personalities the entire game, and you can maybe argue that maybe Kashua is schizophrenic, maybe has multiple personality disorder. I don't know. Like there could be an argument that her character does have a disorder like this. But as I said, I am trying to add a reason to why her character is acting the way they're doing. The game at no point gives us any of this like actual information. I am pretty sure that the writers of this game, like the original script, I don't even know like what has been changed for this version, but I am I'm pretty fairly sure that that was never the case. This character was never supposed to have a mental disorder or anything like that. She wasn't supposed to be in this case. She's not young, by the way. Like she's not old, but she's not like 12 or 13 or 15. Like she is, I think 19. I think Denon's 18. I think she's 19 or something like that. Like she's, she's not old. Like I remember being 19 thinking I was super mature and smart, and you're not. You're not as smart as you think you are. You're never as smart and as knowledgeable as you think you are. But she's at least old enough to kind of understand some stuff. Like, if she was 16, I could kind of see why some of this stuff was happening. But when I was 19, I was fairly decent at understanding this stuff. And maybe it's just me. But I felt like this entire arc just didn't work because of her motives and her actions. Like, it legit just felt like the writers thought this would be a big reveal of her changing sides. And then they were like, "Oh, what if we make her kill herself if you don't choose the correct option?" And then she does. Like I felt like they were like, "This is going to be super dark and gritty and serious and like, you know, but it doesn't work because I don't think the motive is there." So that is just my issue with Kashua. And as I'm assuming you can hear and see, I don't think she's a bad character. I think she is poorly executed. Now, welcome back to the video if you've had to step away because you didn't want spoilers. I didn't spoil a lot, but I did spoil enough where, like, story elements involving Kashua were revealed. But now, with that done, I think this is where my biggest issue with the game does stem from. I feel like a lot of mechanics aren't executed to their best. A lot of characters aren't used to the extent that I think they should have. A lot of stuff is underutilized, and a lot of like story stuff just happened because the writers felt like they needed something to happen. A lot of the story beats, as I mentioned with Kashiwa, happened because they thought it was cool and edgy or interesting, and they wanted it to happen to make the story have more of an impact. That's fine, but it doesn't make it good. And like a lot of like the mechanics, as I mentioned earlier, they try to add so much randomness to it. And I think a lot of the dialogue choices were supposed to add to that. But so much of the random elements in the combat makes the combat feel rough and make it feel like the fight doesn't actually go anywhere. Like it not go anywhere. It makes the fights just feel like they drag on. And even though it does add some cool moments, it also makes it so you can't really properly plan stuff. And it can get really frustrating when it's been 8 turns in a row and fucking Olivia, please fucking meditate for God's sakes. I know you're in the middle of a fucking combat, but please, for the love of God, meditate. Danum is dead. You know? Like, do something, please. So, yeah, I think there's just, like, honestly, if there was just a little bit of tweaking to this game, I think this game would be damn near perfect. Like if the combat stuff was just tweaked just a little bit, like if MP items were available, and like even honestly, just MP items were available. Like it's rare that a game is actually perfect. If MP items were available, purchasable, I think a lot of my issues with the combat would be mostly resolved. I would still have the issue with like the bosses. I would still have the issues that I mentioned prior with like the 100% chance stuff. But I think that would resolve that. And if they gave you more information on the hit rate, so it's like, oh, 100% chance of hit, like you are hitting the character, but they have a 20% chance to reflect it, I'd be fine with that. Or if they just deducted the hit chance from the 100% hit rate, you know, like most games do. But once again, I think they were trying to rely on the you don't know what's going to happen thing. But yeah, I like, and that's why I think I keep coming back to this game. I think the combat is really like it's so close. Everything in this game is just so close to being just perfect, but it's just not quite there. And like, I can get over the issues I have with Vice. You know, small issues with him, with how his character is. If that was just how it is, fine, whatever. My issue with Kashiwa are pretty solid. That those are pretty big story beats. Once again, I wouldn't like it, but you know, I would just kind of ignore it and go on. But I think like where the game really does struggle is with this part of the combat. And yeah, that's just kind of it. So instead of doing like a number out of 10, um, because like I don't often think a game is bad. Like I might have mentioned this earlier, but I rarely don't ever think a game is bad. A game might be underdeveloped. A game like if a game is like technically bad, like doesn't work, for example, like you go to run the game and it just doesn't work, that's a bad game. But I don't typically like to say a game is bad because some games just aren't for me, some mechanics aren't for me, so on and so forth. So instead of being, you know, like if I had to give a number, I would say like 8 or 9 out of 10. But most games to me would be like a 7 or 8 out of 10. So I think instead I'm going to give this game a rating of a really good or bad day out of 10. Because when this game hits, when when your combos are like when your strategy is going and you land a hit, you land the charms, your spells hit the target, your 100% chance hits, and you perfectly execute your plans, and Sure, some little things might come up, that's part of the game, and you overcome those challenges, this game hits like a good day. You know, like the day you wake up, your coffee is perfect, you step outside, beautiful day. It might have been supposed to be rainy today. Maybe it was supposed to be overcast, or maybe you like overcast days and it's an overcast day. But you step outside, the weather is exactly how you like it. You go uptown, maybe you go to the store, maybe you find like 10, 20 bucks on the ground. Cool. You found some money. You buy yourself a treat or something like that, and like just the perfect day. You know, just like that day. That's how this game feels when it's working, and I think that's why I kept coming back to it because it's almost like a gambling thing in that sense, where like when it hits, ooh, does it feel good? But when it doesn't, when it is not working for you, when it is just like fuck you, you're not succeeding, when you don't get like 6 to 8 meditates in a row, like 6 to 8 procs in a row, when in that same session you're getting parried at 100% chance hit, you're just like, of course that would happen. Of course you would do this. Of course, of course that would happen to me. Of course, you know, like a bad day, you wake up, maybe you burn your coffee, or maybe your breakfast gets burned, or something like that. You mess up your cooking or whatever, or it's that day where like the little bad things happen. Nothing major, nothing like no one dies or anything like that. Just a day of like little things. Like you wake up, maybe your coffee didn't turn out right, maybe it's a little overdone, maybe it's a little underdone, whatever. It's not perfect or not just how you like it, but you just kind of drink it anyway because it's there. You don't want to waste it. Your breakfast didn't turn out well. Maybe you stubbed your toe. Maybe you tripped. Maybe you went to have a shower that morning and for some reason you're out of hot water. You know, maybe you go uptown and XYZ happens. All this stuff, bad shit happens. It's just a shit day. And you just kind of feel like crap and you want the day to end, and you're just kind of like, of course that would happen. Like, of course I would hit my elbow the same day I stubbed my toe, and maybe you stub your toe multiple, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where when this game is not working for you, it really is just like, of course that would happen. Of course, Olivia, you wouldn't meditate again. Of course I would get parried here. Why wouldn't I? I only have 100% chance to hit. Why wouldn't I hit you? Like, it feels like that. So that's why I give this game a rating of a good or bad day out of 10. Overall, though, I do enjoy this game. There's a good chance, maybe not this year. Technically, it's like end of 2025, so I'm probably not going to visit this game in 2026, maybe even 2027. But I could see myself revisiting this game at some point because I did enjoy it. I did like it. But I have a lot of frustrations. But honestly, I may have mentioned this earlier, but let me know below. I am always interested to hear the stuff. I wanted to do this little series to have a little bit of a dialogue about certain games I play, because I want to talk about games I love, and I want to talk about movies I've seen. It's just stuff I enjoy, and I often don't get a chance to do so. And I thought this would be a fun way to talk about this, get a conversation going, and just let me know. What do you think below? My only request is be respectful. Be respectful to me. Be respectful to other people. If I don't see people being respectful, being rude, calling names, insulting, I'm just gonna block you, delete, ban you from the chats. Essentially, I don't deal with that shit. So yeah, let me know. I want to hear what people think. Anything I overlooked? Maybe there's some details I overlooked. Maybe there's some dialogue somewhere that I didn't see. Maybe I overlooked something, didn't understand something. Maybe there's some context in the old games that was left out for this game. Maybe there's some like behind the scenes reasoning for these things. I would love to hear it, but love to see it. This is not stuff I would seek out, but this is stuff that if people want to be like, hey, check this out, or maybe look into this, I'll do so. Like maybe, as I said earlier, I'll do a follow up. If there's enough like interest and stuff, I can really make a full video on. But yeah, thank you for watching. I don't know if I'll be posting this before the new year or at the start of the new year, because I'm recording this on the 29th. I originally I recorded this on the 27th and issues. So I don't know when I'll be uploading this, but I hope your New Year's great. I hope you had a great holiday season, and all the best wishes for the new year. And I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.